Hey there, friends. Today we're going to be learning about wonderful worms. And this book is by Linda Glazer, and the pictures are by Loretta Krupinski. Wonderful worms. I don't think I've ever read a book about worms before, so we're going to read this book about worms together. Wonderful worms. You can see them underneath in the ground. And worms are important to our world, believe it or not. Earthworms are fat and wiggly like my fingers and toes. I did catch worms when I was younger. I caught all kinds of bugs. It's fun to do. Just make sure you don't catch any that will bite you or sting you. They live where it is cool and dark and damp, where roots spread out like underground trees. Look at those. These are tree roots. Here's the trunk. There are the roots. Here's a robin and a little mouse. These look like dandelions. I like the drawings in this book. Worms feel sounds with their whole bodies. They feel thunder when I walk. It's a little chipmunk. So boom, boom, boom. Probably sounds very loud to worms, if you could see them. Probably sounds very loud when we're walking over them when they're underground. They are wonderful diggers. They dig passageways and burrows, but they don't use shovels or fingers or toes. Look at that frog there. That's pretty amazing, this little soft creature. If you ever felt worms, they're very squishy. How in the world do they dig? How do they do it? They eat their way through and move along. What? That's something I did not know. They eat their way through the dirt? Have you ever eaten dirt? If so, why? And if not, don't try. They stretch out long and thin and squeeze in short and fat. Stretch and squeeze, eat and dig, move and dig. There's a snake. They also can go underground in holes. They make holes. I don't know how they make them. And here's a mole. Moles can be underground too. Earthworms mix and turn the dirt as they dig and tunnel in the earth. They actually make soil better for planting things. They make the soil soft and airy so the roots of plants can breathe and grow. There's a type of lizard, and there is a snail. I liked catching snails because they have really neat looking shells and they go inside. It's cool. Worms don't have eyes or ears or a nose. They do have a mouth. I have looked at many worms and I never noticed the mouth, but apparently they have one. And they need food just like I do, but they eat dirt and rotting leaves. Look at these cute little mice sitting. One of them is sitting on a toadstool, also known as a mushroom. They swallow tiny pieces, and inside the worms, the food changes. Look at that cute rabbit, that little bunny, eating the strawberries. When it comes out of their tail ends, it makes the earth rich so plants can grow. It's a pretty butterfly. So they're making the earth better by going in there and eating through it. It's interesting to think about. Earthworms are my helpers, the underground gardeners. We work hard in the dirt in my garden, their home. He's picking some flowers, and in the garden, they are growing watermelons. I like watermelons. I don't know if you've ever tried one, but it's worth trying. And this is the end of the story. We do have some facts about wonderful worms. I'll read some of these to you. Are you ready? For young children who want to know more about earthworms, here are some simple answers to common questions they may have. Do earthworms bite people? No, earthworms don't bite anyone because they don't have teeth. Why are earthworms so slimy? Their skin needs to be moist in order to breathe. That's because earthworms breathe through their skin. Also, moist skin makes it easier for earthworms to move through their burrows. If an earthworm dries out, it will die. Why, on our playground, children who've been in our school for a little bit, there's some earthworms that come out of the ground when it's wet, and then they die on the sidewalk, and they get really hard and shriveled up. Why does a worm's skin sometimes feel rough? If you gently move your finger along a worm's belly side from the tail end forward, it does feel rough. That's because worms have many bristles called, I think you say, setae. These bristles help the worm cling to its burrow when a bird or other creature is trying to pull it out. The bristles also help the worm move inside the burrow. If an earthworm breaks in two, does it really become two worms? That's what I heard. No. But if it breaks off close to the head or close to the tail, it won't die. Instead, it will grow another head or tail. However, the shorter broken piece won't grow into another whole worm. What? They make a new head or a new tail. They regenerate these parts. That is amazing. Wouldn't that be nice if something, oops, my hand got cut off and whoop, there's a new hand. How long do earthworms live? They have been known to live more than 10 years. But most earthworms live less than a year. I did not know that they could live so long. Which animals eat worms? Birds, lizards, centipedes, frogs, toads, turtles, skunks, snakes, gophers, and moles all eat worms. In fact, moles catch earthworms and store them in their own burrows so that they'll have them to eat when they get hungry. And people, when they go fishing, they will use worms on a hook to catch fish. Which animal is the most dangerous to earthworms? People who spray insecticides, bug killer poisons, on the earth are the biggest danger to earthworms. That's because poisons can kill many acres of worms at one time, and there can be over 1 million earthworms in 1 acre of fertile land. Where do earthworms go in winter? They go down below the frost line and curl up in their burrows. What is that fat lump on the worm's body? It is called a clitellum. All adult earthworms have one. The clitellum produces a ring-like band after a worm mates. The ring moves forward, collecting eggs, and slips over the worm's head. As it slides off, the ends seal and form a cocoon. Baby worms hatch from this cocoon. I would have never known these things. Where do baby worms come from? They come from eggs. The eggs are inside a small, round cocoon. There are between 1 and 20 eggs in one cocoon, but often only 1 or 2 eggs hatch. When they hatch, the baby earthworms are thin and white. What type of worm is in a wormy apple? It is not really a worm. Whoa. It is a type of caterpillar. There are many insects that are called worms that aren't true worms, such as apple worms, inchworms, tomato worms, and mealworms. You can tell that they aren't really worms because they all have little legs, and they eventually turn into something else, such as butterflies, moths, or beetles. Worms don't have any legs, and they never turn into anything else. They stay worms their whole lives. Are there other types of worms? Yes, there are many types, including roundworms, ribbon worms, flatworms, fanworms, and segmented worms. The earthworm is a type of segmented worm. There are about 12,000 types of segmented worms. A common one is the brandling, which is used for composting. An unusual one that lives in Australia is the giant Australian earthworm. It can grow to be over 9 feet long. That's really huge. Why do worms come out when it rains? It's believed that they come out because their burrows are flooded and the water is no longer fresh. So I was talking about with the playground, they come out. Why don't we see more worms outside during the day? Worms are night animals. Because there is a danger of drying out during the day, they poke out of their burrows to find something to eat at night. I thought they ate dirt. Maybe they eat other things. How can you tell which end is the worm's head? The head is slightly pointed, and that lump called the clitellum is closer to the head end of adult earthworms. You can tell which way their head is by the way that they wriggle, which direction. It's another way. Do worms have a top side and a bottom side? Yes. What? The bottom side is often a little paler than the top side. If you put a worm on its top side, it will quickly turn onto its belly side. Did not know these things. Does it hurt a worm to be put on a fishing hook? Worms have sensory organs that make their skin very sensitive to the touch, and they do wriggle when they are put on a fishing hook, but we don't actually know what worms feel. How can one little worm really help in a big garden? One earthworm can't do much by itself, but in 1 yard there can be thousands of earthworms. Together they mix the soil, supply it with air, and fertilize it. All this helps plants to grow. So earthworms are very important. Without them, our earth might not be the rich and beautiful source of life that it is. And that is the complete end of the book. And we read all of the important facts about earthworms. So cool. Anyway, I learned a lot in this book, more than I have ever known about worms. I just knew that they kind of wriggled around and they went through the dirt. But now you know more than most people about worms. And this book was called, once again, Wonderful Worms. And if you like this book, I checked it out in our school library. You probably can check it out in a public library. And if you really like it, then you can check it, or you can actually buy it and read it whenever you want. Thank you for joining me to read, and I will see you in another video. Bye-bye. SUBSCRIBE, subscribe.